Hi, and thank you for joining us. I'm Beth Ezzell with Hexagon Safety and Infrastructure. And joining me today, I have Bob Carter from Genetech and John Whitehead with Hexagon Safety and Infrastructure as well. And they are here to talk to us about the future of 911 and connecting data points. Now, agencies today are inundated with multiple data points and data sources, but many don't have the infrastructure or the technology to connect their data and to be able to see the whole picture. So why is this, and what is available out there to help them connect? So, Bob, I think we're going to start with you, just to explain to me, what are the pain points that agencies today are dealing with when it comes to data?
Wow. So agencies are inundated with all sorts of data. But if you think about everyone has a cell phone, they're capturing images of some incident and they're sharing that on social media, which becomes another data point then and there. We also have all the IoT devices that are popping up in cities across the country, smart city movement, cameras by individual shop owners, cameras by the government themselves. So they're just, everything that they do has some form of data. And my specialty is more of a video data, but in any event, you have data that's just a mountain of information that's coming. How do you deal with that? How do you organize that?
Right.
Yeah, it's actually amazing because it wasn't just too many years ago where the 911 center was taking 911 calls, most of the time from a landline, right?
Right.
There was no digital stuff back
Right.
then, and it was, here's my incident, here's what's happening. They immediately took that, they sent an officer out. Data transfer really meant bits and bytes, right, of the text that I was putting into that call. And then the officer would go out there and once arriving kind of begin to figure out what happened and how to collect evidence and do that. And now, as Bob's saying, there's so many different data points that are available. The 911 center and us as an emergency service community are really at the forefront of how are we going to take that data? What are we going to do with that data? Not just collecting it, but then using it and making it to where it's going to be actionable for the officers responding. So all types of information out there.
That's a really good point. Back in my day as a police officer many years ago, it used to be a phone call and then the radio communication with the other officers in the field, and that was pretty much it.
Right.
And now that's just the beginning. Once you get that phone call, now you're introduced to so many other data sets that you have access to. It's overwhelming, and a lot of the departments are still way behind in how they address that.
It's almost like the citizens are a little bit ahead sometimes, and they see things and they're sending it out.
Well, and not to interrupt you, but think about what today's generation is.
Right.
We wake up, we text, we go to bed, we're Snapchatting, we're doing all these different things just within our own world.
Right.
An extension of that is the emergency service community and the 911. So immediately they start believing that this is just part of that what I send to my friends, I should be able to send to there, and it should be just as usable on that side too. So it's definitely a unique world that we're in and moving into.
Okay, so we've talked about what are some real world examples of times or instances where having these different, data points connected would make a difference. And, what could agencies do if their data was connected? John?
This is such an open-ended question because, depending on the agency and depending on their workforce, what could they do with this data? So just some of the examples, and we touched on it already, but the video coming in, right? If you think about the amount of times when we walk down the street and we are actually videotaped, when an incident happens, not only do we have the incident on video, but we have everything that's happened up to that incident as well. And that information coming in, and I'll just keep with just video for a second, that information coming in and becoming part of that is actionable data. It is data that we can actually work. And real world scenarios for agencies are just that.
Yeah.
Imagine, if you will, if I could actually see what happened right prior to that incident and be able to use that. And I don't know about you guys use some examples in your
Well, you
setup.
get the bank robbery notice. So someone's gone in and they've stuck up the bank, and so the teller has pushed the button. Well, before that event occurred, you rode by a license plate recognition camera. Maybe somebody's already taking pictures of you with their cell phone. Maybe you've been recognized somewhere through some facial recognition technology. All of this is in play, but it's all in silos. So how do we take advantage of that by its geographic proximity and bring that in so you can ingest that and make that part of your situation awareness and your response and how you inform the officers in the field immediately? That's the key.
It's funny. I feel like how are y'all going to do this? So let's talk about some solutions, because obviously this is something going on. So so is it possible, with modern technology to connect these data sources?
It is, and a lot of that is because of cloud technology, because of the IoT sensors, because things are becoming easier to connect to with much more data that's rich right from the beginning, instead of having to figure out how to ingest that data. Other things are is that we've created a platform on our side that we can take a gunshot alert, we can take the license plate recognition, we can take private sector cameras, we can take the city's own cameras, we can apply analytics to this, we can bring it all into a geospatial reference point so that when you get a hit on a license plate, or maybe a car has circled the block 3 times in a row, and then there's a gunshot, and then there's a bank robbery, well, maybe those things are all interconnected together, and through our data correlation engine, we can present that as this is a possible lead that you should follow up on pretty soon.
Yep.
Yeah.
And on the Hexagon side, this is really where the edge frontier functionality comes into play. Working with companies like Genetech, we have found that bringing in that edge frontier, and today actually we have a Genetech two-way connector now, to where having those tools, that's the way that we bring this in. So it really comes down to not the how, but the what. So I can go to an agency and say, here's how we're going to connect this. And now the connection's there. Tell me what data that you want. And we've just here in the last few months have had agencies come to us, and some have said, you know what, all we need is just a one-way interface. We just want to be able to see data coming in. Well, we've got other agencies that are saying, no, we need two-way interfaces to where not only is data coming in, but then I can forward that out. I can use that as evidentiary. I can do all types of information. I can use that information to do all types of activities. I think that both of the companies are set up in a very unique situation because we both have the tools, and it's not like we're reacting to the marketplace and saying, what do you need us to go build? No, we have the tools that are able to do it, and now here are the data points that we can bring in.
And more technology is going to evolve. I mean, more things are going to come in, so it's being set up with the right tools to have the interface to be able to take in more of those data points, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and what's I'm seeing happen is the conversation starting much earlier. So it's an engagement with the city and the private sector. It's an engagement with the city and the citizens. Is that we're going to go down a path where we need things more interconnected, integrated, so it's not as difficult to get this information and make sense of it. And as that starts to build over time, these devices, these resources are going to become more pervasive, more ubiquitous around the area. And as that occurs, the role of the real-time crime center officer and the communications officer, that's going to become a little more blurry because they're going to be more engaged at the same time rather than just receiving the call and then kicking it off to the guys who are going to run with it from there. They're going to be more interactive from throughout the entire response.
And there's some organizations that have been working on this for the last couple of years. So organizations like APCO and NINA have actually been looking down the road saying, how are our dispatchers, who are really not first line, front line people, right? They're the front line people on the phone call, but they're not responding to the incident. Well, now all this data is going to be coming in the form of videos and pictures, and now we're going to go from being dispatchers, like myself, who was on a phone call, to being live on the scene very quickly. And how do we react and deal with those types of emotions and just handling that within the job? And I'm very excited to see that the APCOs and the NINAs have already started looking into that and saying, here's some training, here's some opportunities, here's some things we need to start thinking about to prepare the dispatch staff in the 911 center for these types of items coming in.
One of the programs we're starting to initiate in cities is to sit down and talk with the city leaders, the elected officials, the police department, about interactive philosophies. It's called Community Connect. And what that means is when you secure your business, for example, in the past you thought about what's my inventory, how do I protect losses, how do I make sure my employees show up on time, but not in addition to that, let's look outward and let's think about public safety matters in my little patch of the city. So if I do that, now I become collaborative in making my city better, and I become another resource that goes into the real-time crime center, which also goes into the hands of the 911 officer as well. So this becomes more information that's actionable in a very short and efficient manner.
Which kind of went into, there was a question about public or private partnership, but this is getting into that, right? I mean, collaboration between all, a smart city concept, safe city concept.
Well, I think we can all agree that cities are not flush with an amazing amount of money, so they have to figure out how to do more with less. And we have to figure out how to work together so you can share other people's resources, share other businesses' resources. And if you create that collaborative model, it's much more sustainable. And when you go to smart city events and smart city meetings, that's one of the primary drivers is how do we collaborate, how do we communicate more effectively so we work together to solve problems.
You know, it's interesting because this actually started after 9/11. The Department of Homeland Security started these initiatives, and they, even at the federal level, realized that, you know what, they can't do it all. So they got to go down to the local level or at the state level, and they can't do it all. And bringing in, and some of their initiatives talk to this public-private involvement as well, right?
Yeah.
We have private businesses that are involved, we have the public that's involved, and working with the state and federal government agencies, we can make it a safer area. And it's kind of funny how an incident back then that kind of started opening up the eyes and the ears here in the nation kind of turned into this, and now we have this safe smart city initiative out there to where these things are happening, and it's going to take everybody to be able to assist.
Right. Well, anything else that you guys can share? This is very interesting. It's definitely what every agency is dealing with, local, big sectors, city, county, state. Everybody is dealing with these issues day in and day out.
Well, I think it's a real exciting time to be engaged with cities and to work with agencies because I'm not just selling them something now. We need to sit down and let's come to the table together, talk about what we have to offer and how we can work together to change the discussion. Let's have more open dialogue. Let's identify the problems. Let's figure out how to engage multiple resources to address that. And I think if we are engaged in that manner, the future is very, very bright.
Right.
And the only thing I would add is I think just like everything else and just like all other technology, we in the emergency service community have this feeling like we're always behind the 8 ball, right? Our neighbors, the other county, the next state always has it all figured out. Bob and I have attended a lot of meetings with some CTOs, CIOs of some pretty major cities, and it's interesting that they're all saying very similar things. We are at the beginning of this initiative. No one agency, no one organization has this figured out. You hear things like, we have all this, we're data rich and information poor. So you're hearing all of these things. So what I would say, and the last thing I would say is, we're all in this together. We're all going down this road together, and there's no playing catch up. Agencies are defining this as we speak.
Right.
Yeah, well said.
Okay, this is great information. Thank you both.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, for more information on this topic, you can go to hexagonsafetyinfrastructure.com, and to watch additional episodes, go to hxgnspotlight.com. Thank you for joining us.